Gukan is about to witness the true scale of the creature he once thought was nothing more than a tiny loach. But elsewhere in the town, Chen Ping'an has made a far more dangerous decision. Armed with nothing but a shard of broken porcelain, he prepares to strike against cultivators who once believed him beneath their notice. And when blood is finally spilled, even the hidden guardian of the town can no longer remain completely silent. Ancient secrets surrounding Chen Ping'an's parents, his fate, and the true purpose of this mysterious town are about to be revealed. This is Sword Comes, Episode 5. The woman clasped both hands over her chest and murmured softly, "That's enough, that's enough." Thinking of the junior woman from Cloudglow Mountain, the old man could not help sneering. After all that scheming and effort, all she knows is how to chase after a few external treasures. She picked up sesame seeds and threw away the watermelon. Truly foolish beyond saving. Then he smiled again. Though I suppose that makes sense. Those old fossils at Cloudglow Mountain have never had much vision. Otherwise, how could this old man have gotten the first move? They sit on a treasure mountain that is practically inexhaustible. Something that should have brought them an endless stream of wealth and prosperity. Yet they have fallen so far that they need a mere disciple of a disciple to preserve their dignity. Inside the room, the child had already spent a long while pounding and kicking at the door. He climbed onto a chair, pressed his face to the window, and pleaded miserably, "Mother, can you let me out? I promise I'll behave." The woman looked toward the old immortal. He nodded. Only then did she open the door and lead the child into the courtyard by the hand. Frowning, she warned him in a low voice, "Little Can, don't cause trouble, understand? Mother has never hit you before. But if you dare disobey me today, I really will beat you." Gukan gave a meek little lowered his head, and put on a pitiful expression. He dragged over a small stool and sat down, forming a three-cornered arrangement with his mother and the old man. Resting his cheeks in both hands, he asked, "Mother, what were you and the storyteller talking about just now? I couldn't hear clearly from inside. What did you say?" The old man gave an absent-minded sound. After a brief calculation, he flicked his wrist, and the white bowl appeared in his palm once more. He lowered his head and studied it intently, his gaze dark and unreadable. Ripples spread continuously across the surface of the water. Bubbles occasionally rose and burst. A black loach-like shadow darted swiftly around the bowl, sometimes even bumping into its rim. The old man murmured, forget it, have it your way." In order to accept this disciple, the old man had exhausted his ingenuity back in Mud Bottle Alley. He had even sacrificed more than 10 years of cultivation before managing to interfere 3 times. The first time, he had caused that woman to step in dog shit. The third and final time had been a secret art in which he had absolute confidence. Outside the town, he would never have dared attempt it. Even a genuine Taoist true lord would likely have thought twice. But inside the town, with Kai Jinjian unable to rely on her usual abilities, the old man had been willing to pay a tremendous price for the chance to force his way into the game. The second interference had been the most exquisite of all. Even the old man himself considered it a stroke of divine inspiration. He had made Cai Jinjian mistake the straw-sandaled boy's well-intentioned warning for a disguised act of revenge. At the time, the old man had manipulated things so that the boy spoke just a little more slowly, allowing the woman to seize upon that tiny detail. One had to admit he had schemed in every possible way. On the road of cultivation, a good karmic bond and an evil one could be separated by only a hair's breadth. At that moment, Madame Gu sat anxiously in the courtyard, terrified that the old immortal might announce some terrible news. The old man's lips curled faintly. From the corner of his eye, he saw the child quietly rise to his feet, then suddenly bolt toward the courtyard gate. Madame Gu screamed. Still holding the white bowl, the old man rose at an unhurried pace. "Disciple, your master will first show you what it truly means for heaven and earth to be vast. Otherwise, you may fail to understand your own weight and ruin the 1,000-year undertaking of master and disciple." Madame Gu's vision went black, and she fainted on the spot. The old man suddenly swept his sleeve. The next instant, just as Gukan was about to reach the gate, he staggered and fell. But when he realized something was wrong, everything around him had become a vast blur. He finally raised his head and saw the storyteller standing beside him. "Where is this?" The old man clasped his hands behind his back and replied calmly, "Inside the bowl." The child became even more confused. Then the old man suddenly barked, "Stand up!" Gukan instinctively scrambled to his feet and did not dare move. He discovered that he seemed to be standing at the edge of a cliff. Far ahead stretched an endless sea of clouds. Then the child's eyes widened in terror. Within that vast expanse of white cloud, an enormous body slowly pushed through the mist. It was simply too large. There was no way to see its full form. Gukan took one frightened step backward. The old man immediately pressed a hand firmly atop his head and said harshly, "If you retreat now, you'll find it almost impossible to advance even half a step on the path of cultivation in the future." Stand your ground. Tears instantly filled Gukan's eyes. The lawless little brat who had never feared heaven or earth was so frightened that he did not even dare cry aloud. He could not stop his body from trembling. His legs shook and his lips quivered. The distant sea of clouds began to churn. The white clouds rolled like a storm about to break, slowly parting. More and more blackness appeared in the sky, growing larger by the moment. It looked like the little black loach he kept in the cave at home had suddenly become enormous. The thought flashed through Gukan's mind. In that instant, the child seemed to lose his soul. Without realizing it, he stepped forward and stretched one thin arm toward the sky. A round head, as huge as a mountain, slowly drifted out from the sea of clouds. Gukan's eyes lit up, all his fear vanished. He even waved excitedly and shouted, "Come here! Come here! So you're actually this big!" No wonder I always felt like there were a lot fewer little fish in the cave the next day. Behind Gukan stood Liu Zhimao, the river-severing true lord of Shujian Lake. His emotions were complicated beyond words: envy, loss, but also joy. He had undoubtedly missed out on an enormous blessing himself. Yet gaining a disciple like this could still be called great fortune. This journey had absolutely not been in vain. Watching that enormous round head approach with his own eyes, the old man murmured, "A wonder beneath heaven." Chen Ping'an suddenly told the girl in black that he needed to go into the room for a moment. He crouched in a corner with his back to her and dug out something dirty, closing it in his palm. When he came back out, he said he was going to buy a medicine pot for her. The house did not have one. The girl watched the straw-sandaled boy hurry away. Then she glanced toward the dark corner and saw an old medicine pot sitting there. And her hearing was actually very good. What Chen Ping'an had hidden in his palm was a shard of broken porcelain, its edge razor-sharp. Just as he was about to leave the courtyard, the girl in black suddenly called out, "Wait, I have something to tell you." Chen Ping'an pretended not to hear and reached for the gate. The girl raised her voice. "Chen Ping'an." He had no choice but to turn around and look toward the doorway. Some color had returned to her face, though her voice was still slightly hoarse. "First, after outsiders like us enter this town, we may still be stronger than ordinary people, just as I told you before. But aside from that, we are not much different from you locals. Second, outsiders are forbidden from killing people here. Once someone breaks that rule, no matter the reason, they will be expelled from the town and lose any chance of gaining what they came for. The price is enormous, far greater than you can imagine. Third, you need to understand this as well. When our lives are truly threatened, even if it means leaving empty-handed, outsiders like us will still fight back. After all, staying alive comes before everything else." Chen Ping'an thought for a moment. "So what you mean is, if I'm going to do something, I have to act fast?" The girl in black grinned. Her expression suddenly became radiant, her eyes bright enough to seem to illuminate the whole room. She patted the saber resting before her and nodded. "Exactly, you have to be fast. Faster, even the fastest. Take me, for example. I carry both a saber and a sword. Whether drawing the saber or unsheathing the sword, I intend to be the fastest person beneath heaven." She paused. In an instant, the heroic swordswoman from some distant land transformed into an ordinary young girl eager to show off. She narrowed her eyes and asked with a smile, "Hey, do you even know how many worlds beneath heaven there are?" Chen Ping'an looked completely blank. The girl realized he had no interest at all and immediately lost her enthusiasm. She waved him away. "Go. Just make sure you actually come back with a medicine pot. I'm waiting to drink my medicine." This time, when Chen Ping'an left, his steps were slower and steadier. Not long after he left Mud Bottle Alley, the unlocked courtyard gate was gently pushed open. Inside the room, the girl in black opened her eyes. She had been breathing in a strange rhythm a moment earlier, but now she stared toward the entrance as though facing a formidable enemy. The flying sword resting on the table in its snow-white sheath suddenly became utterly still. An invisible killing chill filled the room, like winter cold capable of freezing a man to the bone. Jigui strolled leisurely to the doorway. She looked no different from an ordinary neighbor paying a casual visit. She did not step across the threshold. Instead, she leaned her head inside and slowly looked around the room, seemingly ignoring the girl in black sitting on the bed with one hand gripping her saber. After inspecting the place for a long while, Jigui finally acted as though she had only just noticed her. With an innocent expression, she asked, "Big sister, who are you? Why are you sitting on Chen Ping'an's bed? I've never heard of him having any distant relatives." Ning Yao looked at the uninvited girl, then simply closed her eyes again, clearly uninterested. Jigui did not become angry when Ning Yao pretended not to hear her. She only shook her head softly and pursed her lips in distaste. Her gaze moved to the sword in the snow-white sheath on the table. Deep in her eyes lurked intense hatred and fear. A faint golden light seemed to race wildly within her pupils. The maid hesitated, then lifted one foot to cross the threshold. Suddenly, she pulled it back. She coughed and said with exaggerated politeness, I'm coming in then. Silence means you don't object, right? Well, this is Chen Ping'an's house anyway. I've known him for years. You don't happen to understand our language, do you? Never mind. We don't really have anything to talk about anyway. I only came over to see whether he's missing anything. We'll be moving soon, and there are many things we can leave for him. You probably don't know this, but he hasn't had an easy life these past few years. She rambled on and on, wandering from one subject to another, making herself and Chen Ping'an sound remarkably like childhood sweethearts who had grown up together. After stepping inside, however, nothing happened. Jigui walked directly to the table and sat down, the corner of her eye constantly circling back to the sword. At the same time, Ning Yao pulled out the 3 pages the young Taoist had left for Chen Ping'an and examined them carefully, trying to see if there was anything profound hidden in the writing. She turned them over twice, but still found nothing. Disappointed, she muttered. These characters really have no flavor. She clearly remembered the 18 characters carved into a wall back home by sword strokes. Every single one carried a boundless force capable of suppressing 10,000 demons. When she was a child, one of her greatest wishes had been to stand among those characters and gaze into the distance. That was why Ning Yao truly looked down on the 4 characters carved on the town's archway. Spirit soars to the dipper and ox. Jigui turned around and quietly straightened her posture, placing both hands neatly on her knees as if deliberately trying to resemble a well-bred young lady. Facing Ning Yao, she smiled sweetly. My, you really were careless, weren't you? Ning Yao finally lost patience. Who are you? Jigui gave a little gasp and touched her chest in mock surprise. Oh, so you can speak our language after all. Ning Yao asked again. Do you want something? Jigui pointed at the sword on the table. Yours? Ning Yao frowned but said nothing. Since the girl in black refused to answer, Jigui did not press her. She stood and walked to the corner, examining the few objects on the wooden rack. None of Chen Ping'an's possessions were worth much, yet the maid studied them with surprising care. When Chen Ping'an had worked as a kiln apprentice, he had crossed barefoot through nearly every mountain stream surrounding the town. Alone, he had climbed mountains to dig earth and chop wood, moving quickly up and down the slopes. Whenever someone was willing to teach him something, whether it was a crude beginner's technique or something obscure and difficult, Chen Ping'an would throw all his strength into learning it. As for how far he could ultimately go, he never worried about that. In truth, there was little point in worrying about what he could not control. Old Man Yao had always been stingy when teaching him pottery, unwilling to reveal his true secret techniques. But whatever Old Man Yao did explain or demonstrate, Chen Ping'an followed with absolute seriousness. Later, Liu Shenyang taught him how to make wooden bows and fishing rods. Chen Ping'an learned those just as meticulously. Jingchun next door once said this habit of Chen Ping'an's was no good. According to some saying from a book, Jingchun claimed it meant doing everything one could, and then leaving the rest to fate. The problem was that Chen Ping'an had never had a good fate to begin with. If that was the case, Jingchun said, he might as well eat his fill and wait to die, drifting through one day after another until his life ended. Jigui waved a hand and smiled brightly. All right, you keep resting. If you need anything, just call out. I'm Jigui. I live next door. Ning Yao remained expressionless. After leaving the room and entering the courtyard, Jigui deliberately raised her voice just enough for Ning Yao to hear. She's not even that pretty. Ning Yao casually murmured in return. What a vulgar name. Jigui shut the courtyard gate with rather more force than necessary. Bong. Ning Yao closed her eyes again and resumed resting. The strange girl's visit had barely disturbed her state of mind. Still, Ning Yao truly disliked this town. More than that, she disliked the cultivators who came here searching for opportunities, scheming against one another, flattering, deceiving, and calculating. They called themselves immortals and lofty experts simply because they stood higher on the mountain. That did not mean they themselves were truly lofty. In Ning Yao's heart, the great Tao should never be so small. The straw-sandaled boy left Mud Bottle Alley and found the sunlight somewhat dazzling. He raised his right hand to shade his brow and slowly let out a breath. Then he began to jog. His steps were light. Even after crossing street after street and alley after alley, he showed no sign of exhaustion. For a boy accustomed to climbing mountains and wading streams, this distance was nothing. True hardship meant going into the mountains to cut firewood. A single kiln required 2,000 or 3,000 jin of charcoal each year. During heavy rain, chopping wood in the mountains was genuine suffering. Once, Chen Ping'an had nearly died when a shelter under construction collapsed. For years, he had survived by doing this sort of work. There was some technique involved, but after learning the basics, one ultimately earned a living through sheer strength. That was why Chen Ping'an's thin and frail appearance was misleading. Inside, his body had already been tempered by countless hardships. At a certain point in Cross Alley, Chen Ping'an stopped, leaned against a wall, and crouched down. One hand remained tightly clenched the entire time while the other retied his straw sandal. At that moment, his heart was still as water. He only found himself missing his one true friend in town. That fellow had once whispered mysteriously to Chen Ping'an that his grandfather had told him a story. When his grandfather was young, he had personally seen someone standing by a stream take only a few running steps and then leap across the entire creek in a single bound. Later, Liu Xianyang and Chen Ping'an tried it themselves. They found the narrowest stretch of the creek, backed up for a running start, and jumped at the same time. Liu Xianyang, several years older than Chen Ping'an, quickly splashed into the water. Then he saw a dark figure streak past him with a whoosh, continuing forward before finally landing far away. After that, Liu Xianyang never again mentioned the immortal who could cross a stream in one step. Later still, he discovered that Chen Ping'an often went to the creek alone. Run, launch, rise into the air, fly across, land. Again and again, the boy climbed back onto the opposite bank and repeated the attempt without ever tiring of it. Once, Liu Xianyang secretly watched from hiding. What he saw shook him deeply. The dark-skinned boy in that moment seemed completely different from the dull-witted fellow of his usual impression. When Chen Ping'an flew across the water, he looked like a hawk circling above the town. Fu Nanhua saw that Cai Jinjian was in low spirits, so he took her on a casual walk through the town. The two walked side by side, partly to clear their minds. From time to time, Fu Nanhua told amusing stories from Eastern Treasure Bottle Continent. Cai Jinjian still had to force some of her smiles, but compared with her mood after leaving Mud Bottle Alley, she was certainly feeling better. Her impression of the noble young master from Old Dragon City was also improving. Old Dragon City possessed deep foundations and produced talented figures generation after generation. It was only a step away from being counted among the continent's foremost powers, theoretically placing it well above a second-rate immortal sect like Cloud Glow Mountain. Yet orthodox sects like Cloud Glow Mountain, with orderly inheritances and long traditions, naturally looked down on Old Dragon City as a southern frontier power. In the past, meeting someone from there without muttering Southern Barbarian under one's breath would already have counted as excellent manners. Cai Jinjian said bitterly, "Brother Fu, Cloud Root Stones are indeed the lifeblood of Cloud Glow Mountain, but since I gave my word earlier, I won't deny the debt. Even if I have to ruin myself, I'll repay those 10 stones." Fu Nanhua comforted her. Whether Gu Kan's opportunity is already completely settled is still difficult to say. Cai Jinjian shook her head sadly. River-severing true Lord Liu Jimao may have a mixed reputation, but his methods are real. Otherwise, he could never have claimed a treasured island in Shujian Lake. This opportunity can't be forced. If I provoke Liu Jimao, how could I withstand the might of someone with 1 foot already across the threshold into the true person realm? What worries me most is that he may already hold a grudge. Once we leave this town, there will be no sage pressing us, and no rules restraining him. Heaven only knows what Liu Jimao might do. Brother Fu must have noticed something at the border as well. The people my sect sent to support me on this treasure hunt are not strong enough. They are no match for him at all. Fu Nanhua smiled. Don't worry, even if only for the sake of those 10 Cloud Root Stones. Old Dragon City will ensure that you return safely to Cloud Glow Mountain. Cai Jinjian turned and gave him a gentle smile, her large eyes full of warmth. Fu Nanhua felt rather pleased with himself. Out of habit, he reached for the jade pendant at his waist and found only empty air. Only then did he remember that the old Dragon Brings Rain pendant had already been given to the boy named Song Jixin. Cai Jinjian quietly sighed in relief. As they walked, her steps angled slightly closer, and her shoulder gently brushed Fu Nanhua's. Her trip into Mud Bottle Alley had involved a wager outside the original plan. It had been a sudden impulse, though one she had considered carefully. Unfortunately, the facts proved that she had lost. The price was 10 priceless Cloud Root Stones. That loss filled Cai Jinjian with anxiety about the rest of her journey through the town. Without realizing it, she had also begun to rely on Fu Nanhua. Or perhaps it was more accurate to say that a gambler's mentality had taken root in her heart. If 10 Cloud Root Stones were a wager, why not 50? Win, and she would make an enormous profit. Lose. Lose? Cai Jinjian refused to believe she would lose. Absolutely not. She was Cai Jinjian, the greatest cultivation talent of Cloud Glow Mountain. Her path of cultivation had always been smooth. Realm after realm had fallen before her like split bamboo. She refused to believe she would capsize in this filthy little puddle. As Cai Jinjian's mood improved, Fu Nanhua felt that the larger situation was settling into place. He now had the leisure to admire the fairy's appearance and bearing. There was no denying that Cai Jinjian possessed a natural, inward sensuality. If one became Dao companions with a woman like her and spent every day together, whether in cultivation or in bed, life would certainly have its pleasures. A highly respected senior expert had once personally praised Cai Jinjian with the words, born of cloud root, shaped by mountain wind, possessing the bearing to soar to heaven. The implication was that she would make an exceptionally rare Tao companion and a powerful ally. The old ancestors of Cloud Glow Mountain were accustomed to treating cultivation almost like business. Their willingness to spare no expense raising Jinjian over the years was inevitably mixed with the calculating motives of merchants. Marriage between immortal clans was considered a union favored by heaven. Compared with marriages among mortal aristocratic families and great dynastic houses, such alliances had to be handled even more carefully and could last far longer. Still, Nanhua had never liked Cloud Glow Mountain very much. Placing the fate of an entire sect on the shoulders of a woman like Jinjian struck him as ridiculous. That was one of the reasons he had never thought highly of the mountain. Nanhua warned her, suppose the boy living next door to Jingchun was also chosen by some power outside the town, and suppose he still possesses that piece of porcelain. If you act against him now, you may invite trouble. Someone could follow the trail back to you and Cloud Glow Mountain. And besides, Jinjian and his maid, as well as river-severing true Lord Liu Zhimao, may already have noticed what happened. Jinjian smiled. Brother Fu has been focused on the clues leading to opportunities, so you probably haven't paid much attention to some of the unwritten rules here. For children born in this town, 9 years old is an important dividing line for boys. If a porcelain buyer cannot afford to wait another 10 years and find an opportunity to take the boy out of town, that generally means the child's bones and natural aptitude are poor. He is no longer worth much, and the older he gets, the less valuable he becomes. Those sects and clans aren't fools. Why would they pay an astronomical adoption price when the same resources could be used to nurture several direct disciples instead? At the mention of the straw-sandaled boy, Jinjian's heart filled with disgust. Mortals should have the self-awareness of mortals. Nanhua chose his words carefully. That is true enough, but that boy has seen little of the world. How could he understand the noble status of a fairy from Cloud Glow Mountain? If he offended you, teaching him a lesson once should have been enough. There was no need to strike twice. He believed there had to be more behind Jinjian's vicious attack. Anything abnormal usually hid a reason. Perhaps it was connected to some hidden opportunity. That was why Nanhua kept probing and advising her, hoping to find some clue. He did not want to become the mantis stalking the cicada while a sparrow waited behind him, thinking Jinjian was the cicada, only to discover she had been the sparrow all along. Old Dragon City had paid an extraordinary price, even greater than that paid by Righteous Sun Mountain or Cloud Glow Mountain, and endured immense difficulty merely to obtain scattered fragments of secret information. From those scraps, Nanhua had learned that for the past 3,000 years, the so-called opportunities of this town had generally come from two sources. One was the exceptionally gifted children born here. The other was the magical treasures and objects left behind by ancient predecessors, after that unparalleled, earth-shaking battle of antiquity. But once this blessed land finally collapsed completely, things would no longer be so simple. When a dynasty dies and mountains and rivers shatter, great divine weapons inevitably emerge to greet the birth of a new age. Jinjian looked displeased. Enough about him. Just thinking of him makes me sick. A rare viciousness flashed through her eyes. She simply refused to voice the thought aloud, because she did not want to damage Nanhua's impression of her as an immortal fairy. If she ever encountered that boy outside the town in the future, she would make sure he died cleanly and quickly. She would not merely leave him with a sickly body, forcing him to struggle through another 10 or 20 miserable years. What she hated most were his eyes. Deep in her heart lay an obsession she had never bothered to examine. Eyes that clean were something even she, known at Cloud Glow Mountain as clear and flawless, had encountered only a handful of times after years of cultivation. What right did an impoverished boy raised in a narrow alley have to possess something so beautiful? Day after day, year after year? Jinjian tilted her head and rubbed at her eyelid, a gesture that made the corner of her eye seem longer and even more alluring. Nanhua was still casually observing their surroundings when he joked, "There's a saying on the streets of Old Dragon City, when the left eye twitches, wealth is coming. When the right eye twitches, disaster is near. Which eye is twitching?" Jinjian snatched her hand away as if burned and glared at him. Clearly, it was her right eye. Nanhua immediately realized he had brought trouble upon himself and hurried to smooth things over. Just a saying among ordinary mortals. No need to take it seriously. The corner of Jinjian's mouth rose. She leaned slightly toward him and looked at his profile with a smug smile. "Fooled you, didn't I?" Nanhua froze. Seeing Jinjian acting playfully innocent, he suddenly felt a flicker of attraction. For the first time, his intention to kill her wavered. Would becoming a pair of immortal Tao companions with her actually benefit Old Dragon City's plans to expand northward? If Cai Jinjian successfully obtained an opportunity here, her status would undoubtedly rise after she returned to her sect. With the right maneuvering, it was not impossible for her to become the future mistress of Cloud Glow Mountain. Their ancient genealogy had recorded female sect leaders before. If that happened, Old Dragon City would gain a legitimate bridge into the heart of Eastern Treasure Bottle Continent. From then on, North and South could support one another. They could advance when opportunities arose and retreat when necessary. It would be the foundation of a hegemon's great enterprise, allowing Old Dragon City to escape the awkward situation it had endured for centuries, possessing immense strength, yet being forced to remain isolated in the far south and excluded by the rest of the continent. A few steps ahead lay another crossroads where two alleys met. Fu Nanhua looked toward that corner. Suddenly he came to his senses, as if struck by enlightenment. His gaze became resolute once more. Fine beads of sweat instantly appeared on the forehead beneath his tall ceremonial cap. Anyone who disturbs my heart must die, so that my Dao heart remains firm. When Fu Nanhua looked at Cai Jinjian again, his gaze, bearing and mood had returned to their previous elegance. Now he was simply admiring a beautiful scene. A beautiful woman and beautiful scenery were both pleasant to the eye. He might as well look a few more times while he still could. After all, once she left the town, she was destined to perish by his hand. Kill and burn, and you may stand tall. Build roads and bridges, and no bones remain. Some street sayings from the lowest corners of the world truly seem to make sense everywhere. Fu Nanhua's heart suddenly felt clear and open. Jinjian leaned closer and asked in a soft, charming voice, "Nanhua, what are you thinking about that makes you so happy?" Without drawing attention to it, she had changed to a more intimate form of address. Fu Nanhua shook his head with a smile and was about to answer when a shadow flashed at the edge of his vision. A thin boy seemed to cross the alley in a single step and appeared directly before Cai Jinjian, his left hand thrust upward with terrifying force. At the very same moment, his right fist slammed into the fairy's abdomen. The attack was fierce and explosively sudden. A faint howl of displaced air accompanied the blow, forcing the woman to bend forward. Although the boy's right arm was already far stronger than that of others his age, he was actually left-handed. The weapon in his left hand punched straight through Cai Jinjian's throat and drove up beneath her mouth. The boy did not stop. His right fist smashed into her chest, while his left hand continued driving forward. He was determined to leave absolutely no room for anything unexpected to happen. In that instant, blood erupted from the woman's once fair throat. The boy lowered his body, planted both feet, and drove his shoulder into her chest. He sent her entire body crashing violently into the alley. Fu Nanhua stood rooted to the ground. The young master of Old Dragon City's mind went completely blank. When Fu Nanhua finally recovered, he immediately surveyed every direction, not even neglecting the rooftops along the alley. He detected nothing unusual. He drew a deep breath but neither advanced nor retreated. By instinct, he reached again for the ancestral jade pendant at his waist, only to grasp empty air. He quickly began silently reciting a fragmentary Taoist calming formula. It was not a magical technique or divine ability. Its only purpose was to settle the heart and gather one's thoughts. If the state of mind was a small boat drifting on a lake, this formula served as its anchor. Fu Nanhua turned sideways until his back faced the wall, then edged toward the corner where the two alleys met. Every muscle in his body tightened into a defensive posture. He did not dare relax for even an instant. Inside the alley, the straw-sandaled boy stood beside Cai Jinjian, who now lay in a pool of blood. Chen Ping'an's body was slightly bent, still maintaining a subtle attacking stance. His eyes were fixed on Fu Nanhua. The two stared at each other like a wolf and a tiger. One wanted answers, the other wanted to survive. The boy who had suddenly appeared clearly had only Cai Jinjian as his original target. His guarded posture toward Fu Nanhua seemed almost entirely instinctive. Its meaning was simple. You and I need not interfere with one another. Fu Nanhua asked an utterly unnecessary question. You killed her? The boy remained silent. The murder weapon was still clutched in his hand. A shard of broken porcelain slightly smaller than his palm, with only enough of one end exposed to grip. Its edge was viciously sharp. Blood covered the boy's hand. Fu Nanhua could not tell whether it belonged to Cai Jinjian or whether the shard had cut into Chen Ping'an's palm. Drops fell steadily to the ground. After confirming that no one else was nearby, Fu Nanhua felt both absurd disbelief and a strange sense of relief. At last, he looked toward Cai Jinjian's soft body. Even in such a horrifying state, her natural beauty remained undiminished. Her chest still rose faintly. Bright blood continued spilling from her throat and mouth. Her life was almost completely severed. Yet because years of cultivated qi had strengthened her physique far beyond that of ordinary people, the agony she suffered would also be more intense and last longer. A faint smile appeared on Fu Nanhua's face, but beneath it lay a bone-deep coldness. Why did you kill her? You had no grudge against this older sister. Was it simply because she teased you in Mud Bottle Alley? So you decided to murder her? Since when has this town become so lawless? Surely you know that a murderer repays with his life, just as a debtor repays his debt. That principle is the same everywhere. The boy might as well have been mute. He did not answer a single word. Fu Nanhua did not care what Chen Ping'an was thinking. He began walking slowly forward, each step firm. He knew Cai Jinjian was doomed. This was not Cloud Glow Mountain, some immortal cave dwelling overflowing with spiritual qi. This town was a prison of the heavenly Tao where magic was forbidden, unless a land immortal with heaven-reaching cultivation, or a golden body Arhat appeared, and willingly sacrificed more than half of their cultivation to save her. There would be no way to stabilize her scattering soul and bring her back from death. Unfortunately, Cai Jinjian did not possess such heaven-defying fortune. The sage stationed in this town bore important responsibilities and watched over all its people equally. He would not favor one side over another. He would only allow events to follow their course. On the path of cultivation, people sometimes died inexplicably on broad sunlit roads. Others died while fighting for a single opportunity on a narrow log bridge. Such deaths were not common, but they were certainly not rare. If proving the Tao and attaining immortality merely required moving cautiously from one safe step to another, suffering no disasters while enjoying every benefit without taking any risk, then the carefree immortals worshipped by ordinary people would hardly be worth much. Fu Nanhua had therefore prepared himself for the worst, before entering the town even for a desperate life-and-death battle. Yet this was still the first time the young master of Old Dragon City had watched an ally walking beside him be killed in an instant, right beneath the eyes of a sage. There had been no dazzling exchange of magical treasures, no heaven-shaking immortal technique. Just a barefoot country boy from the lowest rung of society killing her with brutal simplicity. The absurdity was almost impossible for Fu Nanhua to accept. Anywhere outside this town, someone as insignificant as the straw-sandaled old boy, whose life was worth no more than roadside grass, would have been dreaming if he imagined he could even see Cai Jinjian of Cloud Glow Mountain from a distance. Fu Nanhua's expression grew solemn. He said in a deep voice, "Although I failed to save Fairy Kai, and I am forbidden from killing you here to avenge her, I witnessed your crime with my own eyes. If I do nothing and word gets out, Old Dragon City's golden reputation will be shattered. So whether by sentiment or reason, I should teach you a lesson. As for how Cloud Glow Mountain deals with you afterward, and how they seek justice for Fairy Kai, that will be your problem." These grand and righteous words were meant for the sage to hear. They were polite formalities, insurance against accidentally offending the person who watched over the town. There was also a chance they might one day be repeated to the old ancestors of Cloud Glow Mountain. Fu Nanhua needed to make it appear that he had done everything reasonably expected of him. Otherwise, as someone who had already entertained thoughts of killing Cai Jinjian himself, he almost wanted to thank the boy standing before him. Chen Ping'an's reckless violence had accidentally saved him a great deal of trouble. The boy could practically be called his lucky general. Fu Nanhua continued walking forward. "Judging from the way you killed her just now, the explosive power of that wretched body of yours is greater than that of most healthy grown men. That's genuinely rare. If today's incident had never happened, and you had someday entered the army, you might have done well. If you had the courage to kill and compete, a little luck, and happened to catch the eye of some great military school expert or an aristocratic battlefield general, perhaps someone would grant you a body-tempering formula. After 20 or 30 years of slowly refining yourself, you might even have carved out a place in the world." As Fu Nanhua advanced, Chen Ping'an slowly retreated, always keeping his face toward the elegant young master in the tall cap. Fu Nanhua's figure was slender and graceful. Walking through the narrow alley, he possessed a natural air of wealth and noble ease. He extended one hand at waist height, palm facing downward, and smiled. "What a pity, your life simply isn't very good. Otherwise, according to what I just said, you might have had the chance to reach something this high." He laughed at his own joke. As he stepped forward, he raised his foot and held it half a foot above the ground. "Sorry, this high is more accurate." Fu Nanhua found it difficult not to be happy. After entering the town, he had first struck a deal with Song Jixin of Mud Bottle Alley, and gained far more than expected. Now Cai Jinjian Somion, who might well have become an obstacle on his great Tao, had suddenly died before his eyes. Not only had Fu Nanhua kept his own hands clean, he could also take the 2 pouches of golden essence coins she carried. Perhaps he might even find 1 or 2 secret treasures of Cloud Glow Mountain on her body. They might not be the sect's supreme treasures, but they certainly would not be ordinary. He refused to believe Cai Jinjian had come here without any life-preserving objects. Fu Nanhua himself, after all, had carried 2 extremely high-grade treasures, besides the old Dragon Brings Rain pendant, which had merely been a diversion. Those two objects were among Old Dragon City's deepest hidden cards. Among wandering heretical cultivators, there was a saying repeated so often it had become almost a proverb. If you collect another man's corpse, rewards will surely follow. When Fu Nanhua walked past Cai Jinjian's body, he did not even look at her. Instead, the faint smell of blood pushed him into a strange state of excitement. One advanced, one retreated. The distance between them remained a little more than 10 paces. Fu Nanhua only needed to make sure Chen Ping'an did not escape from the alley. If a local boy disappeared into the town, finding him again would be no different from searching for a needle in the sea. And behind Fu Nanhua lay the still warm body of a beautiful woman, a perfect warning of what could happen if this boy was given enough time to prepare another surprise. Fu Nanhua appeared to be playing cat and mouse. In reality, he was adjusting the rhythm of his own body. He had formally entered cultivation after the age of 9, and since then had almost never fought purely through close-quarters physical combat to determine victory or defeat. There was no reason for him to engage the boy in a true life-or-death struggle. That would cost far more than it was worth. Counting Cai Jinjian's belongings, 2 opportunities were already within reach. All he needed was to make sure this unexpectedly dangerous boy ended up lying obediently in bed for the near future, with no chance to create more trouble. Fu Nanhua suddenly smiled. "By the way, what is your name?" The boy's blood-soaked hand continued dripping. Instead of answering the question, Chen Ping'an said, his dark face carrying the toughness of wild grass. "Maybe neither you nor she realized it, but my eyesight is very good. So back in Mud Bottle Alley, when she was talking to me, I saw the way you looked at her. It's exactly the same as the way you're looking at me now." Nanhua froze. For the first time, he looked at the boy in a genuinely different light. He clicked his tongue. Interesting. Truly interesting. Everything about Fu Nanhua appeared relaxed and effortless, but he had been watching Chen Ping'an's left hand the entire time. Blood was still dripping from it. That meant the boy's grip had never relaxed. An ordinary person would have long since been overwhelmed by the pain of the shard cutting into his flesh. Only now did Fu Nanhua realize that calling such a boy a pity had actually been an insult. He felt the timing was nearly right and asked one final question that genuinely interested him. "You killed her without the slightest hesitation. Someone must have warned you. I'm not actually interested in who that person was. What I can't understand is this. You grew up here as an ordinary child. How did you overcome the hesitation in your heart so quickly? You killed her so peacefully. Do you understand what I mean? Even after my first kill, once the excitement faded, my entire body began shaking. I had to recite a calming mantra for a long time before I recovered. But you're completely quiet, as if killing someone were no different from eating or drinking. That doesn't make sense." Chen Ping'an's expression remained unchanged. Then suddenly his eyes widened in terror, his face filled with panic. He stared directly behind Fu Nanhua, as though the tall woman lying dead in the alley had risen again. Fu Nanhua, cautious by nature, instinctively turned his head. Halfway through the movement, his heart lurched violently. When he turned back, his height gave him a clear view ahead, but the boy was gone. At the razor-thin edge between life and death, the truth became clear. The instant Chen Ping'an created that terrified expression, he exploded forward without hesitation. 3 steps. His left foot drove into the ground. His entire body shot high into the air. Then his right foot struck the side wall of the alley. Using the impact to change direction violently, Chen Ping'an raised his left hand high and plunged down toward the man in the tall cap. The boy had become a hawk hunting a snake. In the open-air study of the unnamed village school, the middle-aged scholar Jingchun sat before a chessboard. He was not studying some famous game passed down through history, nor was he replaying a contest between celebrated national masters. He was about to place a white stone on the board when he sighed. He had already decided where the stone should go, yet suddenly he hesitated. His hand withdrew. The white stone, however, remained suspended in midair, a little more than an inch above the board. Jingchun sat perfectly upright. He was the great sage responsible for overseeing this place, the former mountain master of Cliff Academy, one of the 72 Confucian academies. Even though he had been exiled here to atone for past faults, Jingchun remained unquestionably one of the purest Confucian scholars of the age. To the ordinary people of the town, grass and trees withered and flourished twice each year. Teachers came and went as spring turned to autumn. They appeared to be different men of different ages, yet all of them carried the same difficult-to-describe scholarly air, old-fashioned, strict, quiet, painfully dull. No one imagined that all those teachers who had come and gone were actually the same person. Nor did anyone know that beyond this small town, Jingchun had once possessed an extraordinarily exalted status and wielded supreme divine powers through his vast and righteous qi. The next instant, Jingchun's primordial spirit left his body. Like an immortal in flowing white sleeves, he escaped the prison of flesh in a single moment and drifted into an alley elsewhere in town. The instant he arrived, Jingchun first looked toward Jinjian of Cloud Glow Mountain, lying in a pool of blood. Her 3 souls and 7 spirits were already wavering and scattering like a dying lamp in the wind. Jingchun paused briefly. Then he moved beside the other 2. Fu Nanhua, young master of Old Dragon City, wore his tall cap and broad robes. His body leaned slightly backward. His eyes were wide, his mouth open. Across his handsome jade-like face passed a mixture of shock, confusion, and despair. Chen Ping'an was still frozen in the posture of his high leap, driving forward with killing intent. His left hand held the porcelain shard, sharp as a knife. Even at this decisive moment of life and death, while his body hung in midair, his gaze remained firm and his expression calm. He did not resemble an ignorant mountain boy, raised in a poor house at the end of a narrow alley. Perhaps the only thing that still matched his identity was the helplessness hidden deep in his eyes. Jingchun was no stranger to that kind of helplessness. He had spent many years away from studies and academies. It reminded him of a farmer whose livelihood depended entirely on the weather, crouching beside cracked and barren fields during a drought and looking up at a blazing sun. There was no heart-rending despair in such a gaze, only a profound helplessness and bewilderment. As the temporary master of this small world, Jingchun naturally knew the truth of Chen Ping'an's family of 3. He could even trace their line back hundreds or thousands of years. Even if he had not personally seen the boy's ancestors, he could roughly reconstruct their origins. The principle was simple. If a county magistrate truly wanted to know the family history of someone under his jurisdiction, he only needed to consult the household registration records. This town had grown and reproduced for more than 3,000 years, its branches spreading far beyond its borders. Generation after generation, circumstances changed. Every age produced a handful of extraordinary figures. Though they could not return home openly in glory, they could secretly support their parents and clans from afar. Over time, this created the 4 great surnames and 10 major clans that now flourished within the town. Chen Ping'an's family also had a long history. His ancestors had once risen rapidly and enjoyed immense prosperity. But after 2 great cycles of ascent and decline, amid the countless vassal states and densely packed dynasties of Eastern Treasure Bottle Continent, the family gradually faded into obscurity. 1,000 years passed, everything changed. By the generation of Chen Ping'an's father, this branch of the Chen clan had declined almost completely across the entire continent. As for the town itself, which lay within the territory of the Great Li dynasty, the family's situation was like that of officials condemned by imperial decree, generation after generation forbidden from taking office, with no hope of restoration. After Jingchun arrived to preside over the Great Formation, he spent more than 60 years carefully obeying the forward instruction passed down by his teacher. Upright, balanced, peaceful, harmonious. He never allowed personal love or hatred to alter the destined paths of the townspeople. In earlier years, Jingchun had also hated evil with fierce intensity. He saw filth and corruption in the grand mansions of wealthy clans, but he also saw suffering and hardship there. He saw poverty in the cramped homes of narrow alleys, but he also saw cruelty and wickedness among the poor. After watching coldly for long enough, Jingchun became like a deity seated high above all others. He accepted no incense. He accepted no human favors. He simply sat and watched the world. Jingchun looked slightly surprised. He stepped forward, examined the frozen scene more closely, then nodded. At first glance, the impoverished boy seemed determined to kill Fu Nanhua at any cost. But judging from the angle of his body, Chen Ping'an was not actually aiming the porcelain shard at Fu Nanhua's throat. Instead, his wrist would strike the man's neck. That was a far kinder ending than the one Jinjian had received. Fu Nanhua would likely be smashed into the wall by the blow. Then the boy would seize his throat with one hand and press the porcelain shard against his abdomen with the other. Jingchun was curious. Why had Chen Ping'an chosen not to kill this time? The opportunity was excellent. If he let Fu Nanhua go, the future consequences would be endless. Jingchun was a pure Confucian who strictly observed ritual, but he was no rigid pedant who only knew how to wag his head beside a bookshelf. He understood Fu Nanhua extremely well, his aptitude, his bones, his temperament, his nature. Even if the young master were forced to abandon revenge temporarily today, this humiliation would become one of the greatest stains of his life. At best, he would exaggerate a small grudge into a great one. At worst, it could become a demon in his Tao heart. When the time came to settle accounts with Chen Ping'an, it would no longer be merely Fu Nanhua seeking revenge. Behind him stood Old Dragon City, the dominant power of the entire Southern Sea. Jingchun had come to prevent Chen Ping'an from killing again, partly out of personal concern, but even more because of fairness. The town was now like a piece of porcelain already covered in cracks. Sooner or later, it would explode into fragments. Jingchun had to delay that unstoppable collapse. He had to arrange a path of retreat for as many people as possible. Ideally, he could hand everything over smoothly to that blacksmith known as Master Ruin and hold the world together for one final 60-year cycle. That would barely count as a happy ending for everyone. Those on the mountain could gain their opportunities. Those beneath the mountain could gain peace. Because most cultivators had always behaved the same way when an age collapsed and old and new replaced one another. When opportunities appeared everywhere and immortality itself seemed within reach, what did the lives of a few hundred or a few thousand ants at the foot of the mountain matter? The so-called heartlessness of mortal imperial families was almost laughable compared with many cultivators who praised the impartiality of the great Tao. Jingchun considered the matter for a moment. Then his figure silently vanished. Heaven and earth resumed their motion. Everything flowed without obstruction. The invisible boundary before them quietly shattered. Chen Ping'an's wrist finally slammed into Fu Nanhua's neck. The young master's head snapped sideways and his entire body crashed into the alley wall. The force left him dizzy and disoriented. The moment Chen Ping'an landed, he rushed forward. His elbow smashed into Fu Nanhua's abdomen with a heavy thud. Fu Nanhua had not even straightened himself against the wall before the blow nearly made him vomit bile. His body folded instinctively. Chen Ping'an seized Fu Nanhua's throat with one hand. With the other, he pressed the sharp porcelain shard against the nobleman's stomach. Fu Nanhua could hardly believe it. The boy was shorter and far thinner than he was. How could those 5 fingers possess such strength? Worse still was the cold, sharp porcelain pressed against his abdomen. For the first time, the young master of Old Dragon City felt death truly approaching. Only the thinnest line separated him from the other side. Fu Nanhua could never have known what kind of terrifying potential might be drawn out of a child who had roamed mountains searching for medicinal herbs from an early age, driven by an obsession with survival even stronger than his own. Once, after eating the wrong herb, Chen Ping'an had collapsed in an alley, rolling on the ground in agony. Even then, the child who should have been sitting in a village school learning his first characters had possessed only one thought. Even if I have to crawl, I must get home. The bamboo basket of life-saving herbs has to reach the house. Cutting firewood, burning charcoal, firing porcelain, shaping clay, digging mud, excavating earth. Not one of these tasks had failed to test the boy's strength and endurance. Outside the town, Fu Nanhua could have casually used a minor immortal art and crushed 100, perhaps 1,000 boys like Chen Ping'an. But inside this town, choosing to fight someone for life and death with nothing but one's body meant that his good luck had finally run out. He had kicked an iron plate. Pain and humiliation struck Fu Nanhua at the same time, throwing his thoughts into chaos. His face twisted savagely. If you kill me, you'll die. If you don't kill me, you still won't escape death. Little bastard, one way or another, you're dead. Chen Ping'an raised his head slightly and looked into the crazed man's face. You should know that I don't want to kill you. You and I had no grudge. You wanted to hurt me first, so I fought back. Fu Nanhua bared his teeth in a vicious smile. A little bastard like you thinks he's worthy of reasoning with me, Fu Nanhua? He forced the words out with even greater emphasis. Are you worthy? Chen Ping'an was silent for a moment. Are you determined to kill me? When Fu Nanhua looked into the boy's dark eyes, his mind abruptly cleared. Chen Ping'an's hand was locked around his throat. Fu Nanhua's face turned red, then blue, then purple. The boy had not tightened his grip any further, but the strength already there was enough to strangle an ordinary grown man to death. Fu Nanhua struggled to speak. If I say I won't kill you, would you believe me? He suddenly tried to wrench himself free. Chen Ping'an increased the pressure almost at the same instant. Fu Nanhua's fingers twitched once. Then his arm fell weakly to his side. Chen Ping'an shook his head. Fu Nanhua was already dizzy from lack of air. In his heart, he wanted nothing more than to smash the little bastard's skull with one palm. On the surface, however, he still struggled to maintain a gentle expression. What if I swear to heaven? People like us can't make vows casually. Fu Nanhua was calculating. Great Buddhist vows and the heart oaths of cultivators truly did possess immense binding force. But he had deliberately told only half the truth. Even if Fu Nanhua swore, he intended to make nothing more than a spoken oath, not a true heart oath. The kind that required no written document, because it was no different from carving words directly into the walls of one's heart. Whether he honored a verbal vow afterward would depend entirely on his mood. Besides, even a cultivator's heart oath was not absolutely unbreakable. There were methods to dissolve such vows. The question was only how much one had to pay. Generally speaking, the price depended directly on the cultivator's realm and on the severity of the oath itself. To Fu Nanhua's astonishment, the straw-sandaled boy still shook his head. Breathing became harder and harder. Fu Nanhua no longer had the strength or spirit to bargain. A dazed look appeared in his eyes. Was he truly going to die? Just like that pitiful Jinjian, killed by the hand of some low-born little wretch? If news of this spread throughout Old Dragon City, would the entire city laugh at him after his death? He did not even have a chance to reach the hidden mechanism on the jade belt around his waist. That white jade belt was actually formed from the remaining essence of an earth flood dragon. That can be done. A clear, resonant voice suddenly sounded beside them. To Nanhua, it was like heavenly music. Unfortunately, at that exact moment he finally lost consciousness. He could not even be certain whether he had imagined the voice. Chen Ping'an turned his head in surprise. He saw Master Qi standing there, his entire body glowing like snow, his form faint and almost unreal. Jingchun smiled. The resolve in Chen Ping'an's eyes did not change. His 5 fingers still did not loosen. Jingchun had no intention of becoming an annoying third party who barged in merely to interfere. Nor did he show the delighted expression of someone who had discovered a rare talent. He simply flicked his sleeve toward the straw-sandaled boy, as though drawing some object out of him and into his palm. The Confucian sage opened his hand. His smile vanished. What lay there looked like a filthy blot of ink. The intention someone had secretly planted inside Chen Ping'an had already lost all its light. It had clearly been extinguished long ago. Jingchun looked up at the boy again. A trace of regret entered his expression. No wonder my teacher once said that among those who truly accomplish great things in this world, extraordinary talent is only secondary. Perseverance without wavering is what matters most. Chen Ping'an, today you have taught your teacher's teacher a lesson. What a pity. I, Jingchun, no longer have the chance to take a final direct disciple. After saying this, the scholar gave a self-mocking smile. What was so valuable about becoming a disciple of Jingchun now? The children filling his little classroom all paid tuition. 300 copper coins a year. Some of the poorest families could not even afford that, and paid instead with 3 bundles of dried meat. Jingchun looked at Chen Ping'an, who was stubbornly refusing to release Nanhua. Deep in your heart, you don't actually want to kill him. But the problem is that, no matter how you look at it, this man intends to kill you. So you feel that you have no choice but to kill him first, preserve your own life for now, and let tomorrow deal with tomorrow. Or perhaps you're wondering whether you should swallow the humiliation and turn a great matter into a small one. Am I right? The boy who had so often stood outside the schoolroom listening to students recite prose and poetry instinctively asked, "Sir, what would you teach me?" Jingchun smiled. Chen Ping'an, why don't you first try letting go with your right hand? After that, you can decide whether you want to walk around with me for a while. There are certain matters I cannot evade. I owe you an explanation. Chen Ping'an hesitated. Then he released his 5 fingers. Nanhua did not move at all. His eyes, his hair, his breathing, everything was perfectly still. Jingchun had activated the Great Formation. The town had returned to a state of absolute stillness. Jingchun said softly, "Stay close to me. Try not to go more than 10 paces away." The middle-aged scholar's sleeves drifted as his insubstantial figure led the way toward the end of the alley. Chen Ping'an followed closely behind. As he lowered his head, he glanced at his left palm. The flesh was mangled badly enough that white bone could be seen, yet the blood, visibly frozen by the stillness of the world, no longer flowed. Walking ahead, Jingchun asked with a smile, "Chen Ping'an, do you believe there are immortals and spirits in this world? Demons, ghosts, and monsters?" Chen Ping'an nodded. "I do. When I was little, my mother often told me old stories. She wanted me to believe that good deeds bring good rewards. She said that more than anything else, so I remember it very clearly. She also said there are water ghosts in the creek that pull children by the legs, and that in the old ancestral hall north of town, there's an underworld official who judges cases at night. She said the door gods we paste on our doors come alive after dark and protect the house for us. I didn't really believe those things before, but now I think most of them are probably true." Jingchun spoke gently. "What she told you was true, and some was not. As for the saying that good deeds bring good rewards, that is much harder to judge. Ordinary people, emperors and generals, and immortals seeking longevity all define good and evil differently. So naturally, the conclusions they reach can also be very different." Chen Ping'an put away the porcelain shard, quickened his pace, and walked beside the scholar. Looking up, he asked, "Master Qi, can I ask you something?" Jingchun seemed to see through the boy immediately. He answered calmly, "This town is the place where a true dragon died, the final burial ground of its bones in the mortal world. Countless flood dragons and dragon kind beneath heaven have always believed that the fortune gathered here is at its strongest, and that sooner or later a true dragon must be born from this place. In reality, for 3,000 years that birth has never come. Instead, the children born in this town often possess bones, temperaments, and opportunities far beyond those of children elsewhere. Even the descendants born from famous immortal couples across Eastern Treasure Bottle continent often cannot compare. Of course, that does not mean every child in the town possesses astonishing talent. Jingchun smiled and did not continue that particular explanation. Perhaps he feared hurting the boy. Instead, he changed the subject. The senior cultivators who took part in the ancient catastrophe of dragon slaying were almost all gravely wounded. Many simply settled here afterward, built crude huts, continued cultivating, and calmly waited for death. Many Dao companions survived together. Others fought side by side, developed affection, and eventually became partners as naturally as water flowing downstream. Over more than 3,000 years, their descendants multiplied until this town became what it is today. On the maps of the Great Li Dynasty, this place was first called Great Marsh Township. Later, a sage personally renamed it Dragon Abyss. Then, because the character Abyss conflicted with the personal name of a Great Li emperor, it was changed again. Chen Ping'an had been holding a question inside himself for so long that he finally could not bear it anymore. He softly interrupted Jingchun. His hands clenched, his eyes filled with longing and expectation. "Sir, what I actually wanted to ask is about my parents. What kind of people were they?" Jingchun fell into thought. "Since that wandering Taoist has already revealed part of heaven's secrets to you, I can follow through the opening he created and tell you some things. In my memory, your father was an honest gentleman. His natural aptitude was ordinary. He was not worth taking out of the town. To certain people, that naturally meant all the resources already invested in him had become a losing transaction. Perhaps they acted out of anger. Perhaps life truly became too difficult. Whatever the reason, the porcelain buyer outside the town tampered with your father's life-bound porcelain. After that, his fate declined sharply, and both you and your mother were dragged into the suffering with him. Later, I do not know exactly how, but your father accidentally discovered the secret of the life-bound porcelain. He learned that once it was removed from the kiln and taken outside the town, he would spend the rest of his life as a puppet with strings in another person's hands. So he secretly smashed the piece of life-bound porcelain that belonged to him. If I remember correctly, it was a porcelain paperweight." Jingchun's tone grew serious. "You need to understand something. Every child born in this town is recorded under a secret number. There are also people here who use a unique art to extract a drop of blood from the child's heart and infuse it into the life-bound porcelain that will later be fired. For girls, that porcelain must remain in the kiln for 6 years. For boys, it takes even longer, 9 full years, during which the kiln fire cannot be allowed to go out for even a single day. As for whether the child ultimately possesses good talent, that is much like whether ordinary porcelain emerges from the kiln as a fine piece or a flawed one. It depends on fate and luck. But once the mold is formed and the life-bound porcelain is finally cast, an enormous price has already been paid. Your own aptitude may be ordinary today, but when your father decisively shattered that porcelain paperweight, you can imagine the fury of the buyer outside the town." Jingchun paused. "As for your mother, she was a gentle woman. Then, unexpectedly," he smiled, "when your mother married your father, quite a few people of their generation in town were deeply disappointed. But if you want me to tell you the small details of their life together, I'm afraid that is beyond me. After coming here, I had many responsibilities besides teaching." Chen Ping'an quietly answered, Then he turned his face away and wiped at it carelessly with one hand. He had apparently forgotten the condition of his injured left hand. His face was soon streaked with blood. Even then, he could not bring himself to dirty his sleeve by wiping it away properly. The two passed beneath the 12-pillared archway. Jingchun spoke plainly. "When the true dragon fell all those years ago, 4 sages personally appeared here and formed a covenant. They agreed that every 60 years, one person would take a turn guarding this place and preserving the remaining fortune left behind after the true dragon's death. Whether the dragon should have been completely eradicated at the time was itself a matter of dispute. But telling you too many secrets that should not be spoken would only harm you. In general, the 4 sides involved are Confucianism, Buddhism, Taoism, and the military school. In addition, the 100 schools across Eastern Treasure Bottle continent, blessed lands and grotto heathens, immortal sects, powerful clans, and many others are all granted certain quotas and chances to divide the benefits here. It is almost laughable. For the last century, whether a sect possessed a quota to buy porcelain has nearly become a standard by which people judge whether it qualifies as a first-rate power or great clan." Chen Ping'an said, "I don't understand what you're saying, sir, but I'll remember all of it. But now that I know my parents were good people, that is enough for me." Jingchun smiled. "I never expected you to understand everything immediately. I was merely laying some groundwork. Otherwise, if I simply told you not to kill Nanhua, you certainly would not listen. And the reason I am asking you not to kill him is not because I feel sympathy for another cultivator, nor because the death of a rabbit makes the fox grieve. Still less am I hoping Fu Nanhua or Old Dragon City will become grateful to me and reward me later. It is the opposite. We Confucians value entering the world and taking responsibility for it. When cultivators act without restraint, conflicts between us have produced countless fierce struggles over the years. If I, Jingchun, had only recently left Cliff Academy and come here to teach for a few years, then whether it was river-severing True Lord Liu Jimao or Fu Nanhua, young master of Old Dragon City, neither would still be alive. I would have reduced them to ash with a single palm long ago. Chen Ping'an suddenly felt that the Master Qi walking beside him had changed. His voice remained gentle, his posture remained scholarly and refined, yet somehow he seemed like an entirely different man. It reminded Chen Ping'an of Old Man Yao after drinking too much. The old potter would boast that the porcelain they fired was meant for the emperor himself. Who in the world could compare with that? When Jingchun spoke of turning someone to ash with one palm, his tone was completely different from Old Man Yao's drunken boasting, yet the expression in their eyes had been exactly the same. Jingchun suddenly frowned and looked toward Mud Bottle Alley. He seemed to be listening to someone speaking from afar. There was no obvious irritation on his face, but the displeasure in his eyes was completely undisguised. Finally, he said coldly, "Leave as soon as possible." Chen Ping'an looked confused. Jingchun explained, "That was most likely the storyteller. His real name is Liu Jimao, Taoist title River Seph True Lord. In truth, he comes from an unorthodox path. His cultivation is high, but his character is poor. The conflict between Yu Cai Jinjian and Fu Nanhua was probably stirred up by him from the shadows. In the end, he even planted a crooked talisman seed inside your heart. It carried 4 words of true meaning. One heart seeks death. He secretly carved those words into your mind. It was an extremely vicious method." Chen Ping'an silently memorized the name Liu Jimao. Jingchun sighed. "Aren't you curious why I didn't intervene?" Chen Ping'an shook his head. Jingchun continued on his own. "This small world is like an ancient piece of porcelain that has endured wind and sun for 3,000 years. It is already on the verge of breaking into fragments. You outsiders are not truly part of it, and the Great Formation protects the structure around you. As long as your actions do not go too far, you are unlikely to shatter the vessel. But I am the person holding the porcelain in my hands. Every movement I make affects the cracks. In fact, no matter what I do, those cracks will spread. If it were merely a broken piece of porcelain, I could let it break. But the fates of 5,000 or 6,000 people in this town, both in this life and the next, are held in my hands. How could I treat that lightly?" These were words Jingchun had held inside for many years. He spoke them too softly. Even when Chen Ping'an strained his ears, he could not make out everything. Jingchun noticed the boy repeatedly wiping his blood-stained face with his right hand. By then they had reached the area around Iron Lock Well in Apricot Blossom Alley. A woman nearby was bent over, drawing water. Jingchun asked, "Suppose several strangers fell into a well. If saving one of them would cause you to die, would you still save them?" Chen Ping'an thought carefully. Then he asked in return, "I want to know first, could I actually save that person?" Jingchun did not answer directly. He only smiled. "Remember this, a gentleman does not save in that way." Chen Ping froze. "A gentleman?" Jingchun hesitated. Then he crouched down. First he straightened the front of the straw-sandaled boy's clothing. Then he gently wiped the blood from his face. When misfortune happens, a gentleman first feels compassion, but a gentleman is not a rigid fool. He may go to the edge of the well to save someone, but he will never deliberately place himself in certain death. The question seemed to awaken something in Chen Ping'an. He asked honestly, "Sir, can I still survive now? If I can, how much longer can I live?" Jingchun considered the question carefully. Then he slowly stood. His answer was firm and absolute. "If you are not afraid of a difficult road ahead, and you are willing to endure suffering, then you can definitely survive." Chen Ping'an immediately broke into a brilliant smile. As though it were the most obvious thing in the world, he said, "I'm not afraid of hardship." Remembering how calm and steady the boy had been throughout their walk, Jingchun found himself relieved. "Come, I'll take you somewhere. I may not be able to directly help you very much, but things have already reached this point. Helping you survive this calamity will not count as breaking the rules. In truth, you should have been compensated with an opportunity of your own to begin with." Chen Ping'an only half understood. The two arrived beneath the old scholar tree. For some reason, the entire town, inside and out, had become utterly silent. Only this ancient scholar tree seemed exempt. Its leaves rustled continuously, swaying in every direction. Jingchun stopped beneath it. His expression became solemn. He clasped his hands behind his back and looked upward. "I, Jingchun, ask for a single leaf from you. Let this boy leave the town safely in the future. At the very least, grant him 3 years without unexpected catastrophe or disaster. The 1,000-year-old scholar tree remained utterly silent. Jingchun asked again, I have guarded this place for 59 years. Even if I have earned no merit, surely I have endured enough hardship to ask for a single ancestral leaf of protection? Besides, this boy is one of your own townspeople. Ancient worthies, must you truly be so stingy? The old scholar tree gave no response. The silence itself seemed almost mocking. Jingchun, your divine powers may be vast, but in the end you are only the pitiful man responsible for holding together this great formation. If we refuse to freely bestow this bond of ancestral incense, what can you do to us? Jingchun's expression shifted between light and shadow. In the end, he could only sigh. He lowered his head toward the boy, his heart filled with guilt. Chen Ping'an grinned and tried to comfort him instead. Taoist Lu said that if I go south of town and find a blacksmith surnamed Ruan, then become his apprentice, I'll have a chance to survive. Master Qi, even without this scholar tree leaf, I think I'll probably be fine. Jingchun smiled. Is that the truth? Chen Ping'an scratched his head, embarrassed. No. Jingchun laughed in understanding. Then, suddenly, a fresh green scholar tree leaf drifted down from the highest reaches of the canopy. Chen Ping'an merely held out his hand. The leaf settled into his palm on its own. A single golden character flashed across its surface, then vanished. Jingchun looked surprised. A moment later, his voice became grave. The character was Yao. Chen Ping'an, are you willing to repay the Yao family's kindness in the future? Regardless of life or death, I will not hide the truth from you. Even without this leaf, you may still have a path to survival. I can tell you that with certainty. So you must think carefully before answering. Chen Ping'an asked, is it the same Yao as Master Yao's surname? Jingchun nodded. Yes. Chen Ping'an brought his palms together, gently pressing the scholar leaf between them. He raised his head and spoke loudly. As long as I live for one more day, then whenever something concerns a person surnamed Yao, I will do what Master Qi just taught me. Even if that person falls into a well, even if saving them means I will certainly die, I, Chen Ping'an, will still save them. Heaven remained silent. Jingchun smiled. Let's go. As he led the boy away, Jingchun quietly glanced back toward the dark heights of the scholar tree. A mocking look appeared on his face. It was not that there were no scholar tree leaves belonging to the surname Chen. In fact, there were more than 1 or 2. But in the end, even knowing that this place was about to collapse, those ancestral blessings would rather search for different hosts. Even people who did not share the surname, Chen then offer even a single thread of inherited protection to the straw-sandaled boy from Mud Bottle Alley. Jingchun turned back and rubbed the boy's head. He teased, if Song Jikan, Zhao Yao, Gu Kan, or one of the others had made the kind of great vow you just made, it might have triggered a resonance between heaven and earth. Chen Ping'an smiled like sunlight. That has nothing to do with me. I only need to do my own things properly. Jingchun asked again. Was that one the truth? The boy laughed. Yes!